Marzieh Hashemi, thanks so much for being with us. First situation story takes us to Syria. Well, the Syrian foreign minister says the U.S.-led coalition, which is in Syria under the pretext of combating terrorism, has committed massacres against civilians in the war-torn country.
Illegitimate international coalition led by the United States on the pretext of combating terrorism in Syria. The so-called international coalition has done everything but fight terrorism. It has even become clear that the coalition's goals were in perfect alignment with those of terrorist groups, spreading chaos, death and destruction in their path. The coalition destroyed the Syrian city of Raqqa completely. It destroyed infrastructure and public services in the areas it targeted. It has also committed massacres against civilians, including children and women.
Muallem said the campaign led by the U.S. has done everything in Syria except fight against terrorism. He said Syria's battle is almost over and the country will soon purge its territory from all terrorist groups, regardless of their names. Muallem called on U.S., French and Turkish forces to withdraw immediately from Syria. He said Damascus is now determined to liberate the occupied Golan Heights from Israel. Muallem noted that Tel Aviv had direct military intervention and launched repeated attacks on Syrian territory. The top diplomat stressed that the doors are all wide open for Syrians abroad to return home. Crossing over to Norway, joined by John Stepling, author and commentator. Thank you so much for being with us. Well, you heard the foreign minister of Syria speaking. Basically, it was interesting. He said that the United States has done everything inside of Syria except fight against terrorism. Tell me, at a venue like the United Nations, can that type of speech actually have an effect on others? And can it actually make the United Nations look a little bit closer, not only at the situation happening in Syria, but in other places where the United States is involved?
Well, I have no idea what the reaction that the representatives at the UN will have. But understand, the United States sends professional liars to the UN. Obama sent a very skilled liar in Samantha Power, and Trump sent an idiot in Nikki Haley. But the lies are the same. And the US has targeted Syria for a very long time. Long before 2011. I mean, this goes back 30-some years, maybe even longer. They've imposed sanctions. They currently occupy a third of the country, actually. They have funded proxy fighters, jihadists, and so forth. So the Syrian representative is telling the truth to that extent. And certainly the U.S. is capable of committing massacres. We don't have to look any further than Fallujah. But the U.S. objects to Arab independence, whether it's Nasser in Egypt or Gaddafi in Libya or Assad in Syria. And they have no intention of leaving, and those policies are going to continue, certainly with people like John Bolton and Mike Pompeo and Jim Mattis holding positions of power. The U.S. forgives Israel all its crimes because Israel is an extension of the U.S. The same with Saudi Arabia. I mean, look at Yemen, look at the suffering there, look at the criminal sadism, the crimes perpetrated on Palestinians by Israel. This passes without comment from the U.S. So they invent stories about Syria. They invented a lot in 2011 to try to justify the escalation at that time. You know, they've imposed sanctions across the Arab world. The one in Iraq caused, you know, I mean, 500,000 deaths or something. So you know, the fact that they are accused of this is likely. They're also U.S. paid mercenaries in the region. You know, I'm not privy to what happened, but it's certainly not unthinkable. Will the UN look at it? Some countries are already looking at it, certainly, and some will not look at it. I mean, one would hope that the European allies of the U.S., those NATO countries that are, complicit in these crimes, that they would start to look at it. But I'm not terribly optimistic about that.
All right. Thank you so much for being with us out of Norway, John Stepling, author and commentator.